Good morning, everyone. We rise today on the 3rd of April to another federal budget, the first presented by Josh Frydenberg, our new Treasurer. It's a very interesting time to have a federal budget as we are on the cusp of another federal election with a whole lot of speculation that the current government probably won't be there to implement the changes that they've outlined tonight in the budget. The issue then becomes, what will the Labor Party do if they're elected? Now, there are obviously some things that they agree with, some things that they don't. Just like to give you a few highlights to start your day. There'll be plenty of coverage out there in various newspapers and on the TV, but I've taken a few notes and share them with you now. So I guess the headline proposal is the continuation of the tax changes that were announced last year in the federal budget. And the tax changes that are of most importance are the changes to the marginal rates over the long period of time. We need to have the Morrison government in for another 2 terms past the one that they're actually sitting for now in order to get all of these changes across the line. But notwithstanding, they're worth mentioning. So from the 1st of July of 2022, the 19% tax-free threshold will be increased to apply between $37,000 to $45,000. So it'll be in place from people that earn $45,000 and above. From July of 2024, the bigger change happens where the 37% rate is abolished altogether, and the new the 32.5% rate drops to 30% and applies all the way through to incomes of $200,000. As I said, this isn't new. What is new is the doubling of the low to middle income earners tax offset. Currently this is $530 and applies where the low income tax offset cuts out at $48,000 and applies through to $90,000 for the full rebate and shades out to $126,000 where there's no rebate payable over and above that amount. From the 1st of July of 2019, so people will feel this in their tax returns for this financial year, the tax low to middle income tax offset increases to $1,080 a person from $530 a person. And as I said, you have to be earning no more than $90,000 to get the full impact of that rebate. So tax was probably a centerpiece. The focus on helping the middle class is one that's shared by both sides of government, and it's likely that a lot of these initiatives will continue to see the light of day. Probably not the ones that are targeted for people earning closer to the $200,000 mark. Under Labor, that's probably a bridge too far, but we'll have to see what happens. Importantly, there have been some announcements in terms of aged care, which again, continuation of initiatives announced first last year, and that is the funding of additional places, both in the aged care, residential aged care environment, another $320 million increase to the basic subsidy, which will give rise to another 13,500 aged care places over the next 5 years, which is great news, although there is much more left to do because there is a huge gap still in the provision of aged care in Australia. Importantly, where people are wanting to stay at home and have the ability to stay at home, there's been another increase or another amount pledged to increase the number of home care packages by 10,000 over the next 5 years. This is another $282 million that has been pledged to the provision of home care, which, as I said, is a great step in the right direction. However, currently there are 126,000 people, according to the National Seniors Association, that are actually waiting for home care packages. So again, much more to do. Superannuation. Really, the changes to superannuation have been much like more like a tidying up exercise, as far as just trying to align the work test requirements to when the age pension starts. So from 1st of July of 2020, the 65 and 66-year-old people will be able to contribute to superannuation without satisfying a work test. So this means they'll be able to make voluntary pre-tax and after-tax contributions depending on their circumstances. And the other aspect of aligning better to the aged pension system is the availability of spouse contributions right through to age 74. Currently, spouse contribution eligibility cuts out at age 70. And also with spouse contributions, there will be no need for the 65 and 66-year-olds to satisfy a work test in order to make those contributions to a non-working or low income earning spouse. And the other aspect of having a more flexible approach to the ability to make superannuation contributions is that 65-year-olds and 66-year-olds will be now able to use, from July of 2020, the bring forward rules. This allows them to bring forward 3 years of non-concessional contributions and make them in one go. This will allow people to sell businesses, make contributions from inheritances that they might receive, because superannuation is still a very tax-effective environment for people to fund their retirement savings. There is no tax on pension funds earnings within the fund and no tax on pension payments, and a favourable tax rate on accumulation balances leading up to retirement, so it's still worthwhile pursuing. So really not a lot for superannuation this year. Great promise in aged care, great promise in the provision of home care packages, and of course a continuation of the running tax relief for low to middle income earning Australians, but all underlined by the need for the coalition to be returned to power and the initiatives passing through the Senate. Some would say a bridge too far. I guess in the next few days we'll know the date where we are making that decision. So thanks very much for listening, and please don't hesitate to give us a call if there are any questions on anything that I've covered this morning. Thanks very much.